Hey everyone, my name is Trivial and today I'm going to discuss level design. To do so, I'll use this Thief level I recently made as a case study. It's called Down a Stone Trail. The techniques I'll be talking about should apply to any games, so you don't necessarily need to know about Thief to watch this video. If, on the other hand, you are into Thief, please beware that I will spoil the entirety of the mission, so you might want to play it before watching. Link in the description. So for this video I'll be playing through the mission and regularly pause to point out things as they come up. A sort of developer commentary if you will. And while I'm at it, please note that the gamma was increased in this video for the sake of YouTube's compression. The actual mission is generally darker and with more contrast. Now with that said, let's get started. This very first exterior section doesn't serve any purpose in terms of gameplay, except it helps the pacing by gently leading the player into the actual level. Taking your time is better than throwing the player in the neck of the action right away. I myself have done that mistake in the past. In addition to that first open and light area builds a great contrast with the following dark and tight caves. Level design is all about creating such contrast and variation, a bit of colors, light and dark, large and tight, interior and exterior. Whenever you have a chance to create contrast in a level, you probably should take it. This may be the single most consistent rule of level design. The red mushroom collectibles are a fun subversion of the classic loot objectives. This time, instead of looking for gold and gems, you need to find glowing mushrooms in the cave. It felt like a great way to make it more interesting and original while remaining cheap to implement. Once again, I set up dark and tight corridors that will contrast with the huge open central room coming up. Hopefully this is enough to make it a great gasp moment. Line of sights allow me to provide clear goals to the player. This vantage point sets both short and long-term goals, as well as foreshadowing a later area that is unreachable for now. Although it is good to clearly set goals for the player, it is important to let them feel lost as well. The goal is periodically obstructed while in those tunnels, creating excitement and anticipation for the player. In general, if the path forward is always clear and obvious, the layout risks to become boring or uninteresting. In addition to setting goals, sightlines can be used with previous areas to help with a feeling of progression and with creating a mental map of the space. Getting sightlines to recurring area like so requires a macro layout to be designed in an interconnected way rather than a linear one. A good starting point to get such a result is to architect the layout around a single center room which you go in and out of over the course of the level, as I did here. One-way gates, such as this drop, signify to the players they are on the right track. They now understand they should feel free to clear out of their mind the previous section, as it is no longer relevant to them at the moment. Without this, level risks to become an ever-expanding space of possibilities and to overwhelm the player. Funneling the player through these tight choke points allow me to control their viewpoint as they enter the next area. That way, I can focus on a single composition and make it look as good as possible. So, this section was designed first and foremost to be viewed from this location, with an interesting and layered composition with foreground, middle ground, and background. Differentiating the various areas is key to making the level feel like it is progressing. If the various acts of the level are too samey, the level as a whole will coalesce into a uniform and monotonous blob. It was really hard to resist the temptation of adding trees in this ancient city section, but it had to be done to differentiate it from the previous room. Likewise, there are no light mushroom here either. The key point is, if a design element is core to a specific section of your level, you probably want to segregate it to that section only. Lighting can also be used to differentiate sections. The blue hue exclusive to the ancient city appeared late into development, but was key to make the section feel unique. In this section, I wanted the player to have to look for the exit, that's why I didn't show it right away at the start. Remember, showing the goal to the player is important, but hiding it can also be beneficial depending on the mood and the gameplay you're going for. Once again, the viewpoint when entering this room is tightly controlled for the best composition. Here, this room was purposefully made huge and empty to feel ominous, and such that the eye is attracted to the only space with props. The large, hard shadow casting from the bed also participates to the mood and detracts from the exit door on the opposite end. It punctuates what is supposed to be an interesting narrative twist, although it is a bit basic. Once again, the strong interconnectivity of the level easily makes what could have been a random loot stash into a memorable moment with a great view. When talking of landmarks, people often think of huge elements such as a mountain or the Citadel from Half-Life 2. In practice, what matters is not the side, but for it to be unique and notable. Those tunnels look too much alike and were forgettable, so I added these small pieces of stone in the corner, which appear only here and call back to a texture used in the next room. That way, players immediately recognize which side of the tunnels they're on and don't get lost. As a rule of thumb, every room should have a unique landmark or characteristic, and no two rooms should look the same. When it comes to lighting, I enjoy lighting spaces with a single strong light source rather than a bunch of small ones. This very easily creates interesting contrasts and shadows. The case of Thief is peculiar, as it is a very unique game to light, because shadow spots are integral to the stealthing gameplay. Combining single light sources with this need for gameplay is not easy, but such limitations can also naturally lead the design into interesting micro layout elements, such as these pillars, which weren't initially planned. I knew from the get-go I needed to find a way to incorporate writing in the mission somehow, despite it not taking place in the city. Much more than lore, Readables in Thief's game design serve as a pacing device and a switch-up of the gameplay loop. Missions without readables run the risk of becoming too tiring. Adding this subplot of an old Amorite expedition in the cave was a nice, diegetic way of implementing that. Even though the text don't mean much, it's not about what it's saying, it's about helping the pacing. As long as they remain short, people won't complain. We're once again back in the center room. This is a great payoff, as player already noticed this location at the beginning, without yet knowing it would be the final stop of their journey. Visibility is central to an effective level. A way to test it is by checking if you can still see what's going on with the game blurred or while squinting. To that effect, key interest location should be back or front lit, creating a clear contrast. Once again, I use these windows to call back to an earlier part of the level, making it feel like a real interconnected location. These windows were not planned, and were actually a lucky accident. As a rule of thumb, I try to always open up and connect my areas whenever I have the chance, even when it's not planned, since a more interconnected level is almost always better. Since I used multiple one-way gates over the course of the level, we need to get creative to allow backtracking now that the player is done. A last one-way gate is used, taking back to the earlier part of the level and forming a loop, which is much more interesting than the typical back and forth of a linear level. Additionally, since the door stays open after reaching it, it makes the level much more open and easy to navigate, helping players who maybe want to backtrack for some loot they missed. Opening up and freeing the level at the end is a good way to avoid frustration. The same thing can also be achieved by granting the player movement items at the end of the level, such as rope arrows. This room has a fun recontextualization, as we couldn't see the collectibles the first way through, but now that we are going the opposite way, we can easily notice it. This brings a bit of interest to that final backtracking portion. Much like the starting section, backtracking all the way to the start of the level at the end can feel like a waste of time, but it allows for gently lowering the pacing and cleanly bringing the journey to a close in a much less abrupt way than it would be ending it inside the cave. As was the case at the beginning, the light of the outside once again creates a contrast with the rest of the mission, this time reassuring and satisfying. And with that, we are done with the playthrough. I hope you found it interesting and maybe learned something new. If you disagree with anything I said, please feel free to tell me in the comment down below. As always, I thank you for accompanying me in this video and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.